The A-10 Thunderbolt II earned its nickname Warthog for good reason: ugly, tough, and absolutely unstoppable. For 30 years, this aircraft has been the guardian angel of American ground troops, swooping down with its devastating 30mm cannon to turn the tide of battle. But what happens when the pilot who once commanded the skies can no longer trust herself to fly? When a decorated Air Force officer becomes just another civilian contractor, haunted by a single moment that changed everything? Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought at 30,000 feet, they're fought within ourselves. Maria Santos discovered this truth the hard way. The security guard at Whiteman Air Force Base barely looked up from his clipboard. "First day, ma'am?" "Yes." Maria Santos adjusted her contractor badge and stepped through the gate. The familiar smell hit her immediately: jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, and that metallic scent that clings to everything on a military base. 5 years away, and her body still remembered. She walked across the tarmac toward Hangar 7. A crew chief waved at an incoming A-10, guiding it to a parking spot with practiced hand signals. The pilot shut down the engines, and the sudden quiet felt strange after the thunder of the twin turbofans. "You Santos?" A young airman approached, sweat staining his uniform. "I'm supposed to show you to your bird." "That's me." He led her through the main hangar. Active aircraft filled most of the space, A-10s in various stages of maintenance, some with panels removed, others getting fresh paint. Mechanics crawled over the planes like ants, each one focused on their piece of the puzzle. "She's back here," the airman said, pointing toward the far corner. Maria followed him past the busy work areas to a section that felt forgotten. Dust particles danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through high windows. In the corner sat a single aircraft, covered by a gray tarp. "Been sitting here about 5 years, the airman said. "Nobody wanted to work on her. Something about bad luck." He shrugged. "Probably just superstition." Maria walked around the covered aircraft. Even under the tarp, she could see the distinctive shape: the twin engines mounted high on the fuselage, the straight wings built to carry heavy weapons, the armored cockpit designed to bring pilots home alive. "You need anything else, ma'am?" "No. Thank you." The airman left her alone with the sleeping giant. Maria grabbed the edge of the tarp and pulled it back. Tail number 78-0691 stared back at her. The gray and green camouflage paint was faded, and red dust covered everything. But the aircraft sat solid on its landing gear, nose pointed toward the hangar doors like it was ready to taxi out and fly. She walked to the front of the plane and placed her hand on the nose. The metal felt warm from the afternoon sun. Her fingers traced the edge of the cockpit window, and something twisted in her chest. The stick felt frozen in her hands. Warning lights flashed red across the instrument panel. "Viper 2, you're drifting left." The radio crackled with static. She pulled back on the stick, but the controls wouldn't respond. "Maria, watch your altitude." The ground rushed up to meet them. "Hey, you okay?" Maria jerked her hand away from the aircraft. A gray-haired man in coveralls stood nearby, holding a wrench. His name tag read Williams. "I'm fine. Master Sergeant Williams. Most people call me Pops." He looked at the A-10, then back at her. "You're the new contractor? The one who's supposed to get this old girl flying again?" "That's right." Pops nodded slowly. "She's been sitting here since they brought her back from Afghanistan. Engine problems, they said. But I think she's just waiting for the right person." Maria's phone buzzed. She pulled it out and saw a text from her sister: "Mom's proud you're back on base, even if it's just teaching. Dad would be too." She stared at the message, then at the aircraft. Pops was still watching her, his expression unreadable. "I'll need to see the maintenance records," she said. "Course. They're in the office." He pointed toward a door marked Squadron Operations. "But first, you might want to get familiar with what you're working with." Maria looked back at the A-10. 5 years ago, she'd been a captain, flying combat missions. Now she was a civilian contractor, assigned to resurrect a forgotten aircraft and teach young pilots how to fly it. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I guess I better." The afternoon sun slanted lower through the hangar windows. Soon, the day shift would end and the night crew would take over. But Maria wasn't ready to leave. She had work to do. The squadron operations office smelled like coffee and old paper. Maria sat across from Colonel James Mitchell, a man whose silver hair and lined face spoke of decades in uniform. His Purple Heart and Bronze Star ribbons told their own story. "Your record speaks for itself," Mitchell said, flipping through her file. 96 combat missions. Distinguished Flying Cross. You were one of our best. Were. Maria kept her voice steady. The accident wasn't your fault. The investigation made that clear. Tell that to Lieutenant Morrison's family. Mitchell closed the file. You're here to train pilots, not carry ghosts. These kids need an instructor who can focus on the mission. I can do the job. I hope so. He stood up. Your first class starts in 20 minutes. Conference room B. Maria walked down the hallway toward the briefing room. Through the windows, she could see the flight line where A-10 sat ready for training missions. Young pilots walked between the aircraft, checking weapon systems and talking with ground crews. She opened the door to conference room B. Four pilot trainees sat around a table, their flight suits crisp and new. They looked up as she entered. "Good morning. I'm Maria Santos, your civilian contractor instructor." "Ma'am," they replied in unison. She studied their faces. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez, barely 23, from Texas. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, probably the youngest in the group. Lieutenant Marcus Thompson, confident in the way that only came from never having failed at anything. And Lieutenant Amy Foster, whose serious expression reminded Maria of herself at that age. "Today we're covering emergency procedures," Maria said. She clicked the first slide of her presentation. Engine failure, hydraulic loss, electrical problems. Things that can kill you if you don't react correctly. The students took notes as she went through each scenario. Maria had given this briefing dozens of times as an active officer. The words came automatically. "What about combat situations?" Rodriguez asked. "When you're taking fire and systems start failing?" Maria stopped clicking through slides. The room felt smaller suddenly. "Combat is different," she said. "You're not just managing the aircraft. You're protecting ground troops who are counting on you." "What was your worst emergency?" Chen asked. The question hung in the air. Maria looked at the eager faces around the table. They wanted war stories, tales of heroism under fire. She swallowed. "We should stick to the training scenarios." "But you flew in Afghanistan, right?" Thompson leaned forward. "What was it like?" "It was." Maria's hands started to shake. She put them behind her back. "We need to focus on the procedures." The students exchanged glances. Foster raised her hand. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Maria stared at the presentation screen. The emergency checklist blurred together. She could hear the radio chatter from 5 years ago, Morrison's voice calling for help. "Class dismissed," she said quietly. "But we've only been here 10 minutes, Rodriguez said. "I said dismissed." The students packed up their notebooks and filed out. Thompson whispered something to Chen as they left. Maria stood alone in the conference room, staring at the emergency procedures slide. An hour later, she walked back toward the hangar. Colonel Mitchell stood by the squadron operations door, talking with his aide, Captain Williams. "She's not ready," Mitchell said as Maria approached. "One mistake in the cockpit and she cost us a good pilot. Now she's supposed to train the next generation." Maria stopped walking. Mitchell hadn't seen her yet. "Sir, maybe she just needs time," the aide said. "Time?" Mitchell shook his head. "Those kids in there need confidence. They need someone who can lead them through the worst-case scenarios." not someone who falls apart when they ask about combat. Maria turned around and walked back toward the hangar. She found the ready room empty and sat down at one of the long tables. On the wall hung photos of previous squadrons, rows of young pilots standing in front of their aircraft, proud and unafraid. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through old photos until she found one from her deployment. Her old squadron stood in formation, Morrison right next to her. Both of them were smiling. Maria set the phone down and stared at the squadron photos on the wall. The faces changed, but the expression stayed the same. Confidence. Purpose. Everything she used to have. Outside, she could hear the rumble of A-10 engines starting up for afternoon training flights. The sound that used to fill her with excitement now felt like a reminder of everything she'd lost. Maria arrived at the hangar before sunrise. The night security guard let her in without question. She'd been coming early for 2 weeks now, working on the A-10 when the hangar was quiet and empty. She opened her toolbox and pulled out a flashlight. The aircraft's belly was covered in access panels, each one hiding different systems. She'd already replaced the fuel pumps and cleaned the hydraulic filters. Today, she was tackling the electrical system. "You're here early." Maria looked up to see Pops walking toward her, carrying a thermos of coffee and a bag of donuts. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Coffee helps." He held out the thermos. "Been watching you work. You know your way around these birds." Maria accepted the coffee gratefully. "I should. I flew them for 6 years." "Thought so. You handle the tools like a pilot, not a mechanic." They worked in comfortable silence for the next hour. Pops handed her tools and held flashlights while she traced wiring harnesses. His hands were steady despite his age, and he knew exactly what she needed before she asked. "This bird's got history," Pops said as they replaced the corroded connector. "She came back from Afghanistan with more holes than a colander. Took us 3 months to patch her up." "What happened to her pilot?" "Captain Williams. No relation to me. Good kid. Took some shrapnel in the leg, but he made it home." Pops tightened a bolt. "That's what these planes do. They bring people home." Maria pulled herself out from under the wing. "Not always." "No. Not always." Pops looked at her directly. "But most of the time. And when they don't, it's usually not the pilot's fault." The morning shift started arriving. Mechanics wheeled tool carts across the hangar floor, and the coffee pot in the break room started gurgling. Maria had learned to time her work around the base's rhythm. "Santos, you got a minute?" She turned to see Lieutenant Foster approaching. The young pilot looked nervous. "What is it?" "I wanted to apologize. For the other day. We shouldn't have pushed you about combat stories." Maria wiped grease from her hands. "You don't need to apologize." "Yes, I do. My dad flew F-16s in Desert Storm. He never talked about it either. Not until I was older." Foster looked at the A-10. "Is this your bird?" "For now. She's beautiful. In a mean sort of way." Maria almost smiled. "That's the idea." Foster walked around the aircraft, studying the gun barrel that stuck out from the nose. "Will you be able to fly her again?" "We'll see. She needs a lot of work first." "I meant you." The question hung between them. Maria had been asking herself the same thing for weeks. "I don't know," she said finally. Foster nodded. "My dad said the hardest part about flying wasn't the danger. It was trusting yourself to make the right decisions when everything was falling apart." After Foster left, Maria went back to work. She removed the engine cowling and inspected the turbine blades. Everything looked good, but she cleaned them anyway. The methodical work helped quiet her mind. "Hand me that wrench," Pop said. He was working on the landing gear, checking hydraulic lines for leaks. They worked through lunch. Other mechanics stopped by to watch their progress. Word was spreading through the squadron that the old A-10 in the corner was coming back to life. Why'd you volunteer for this? Maria asked as they replaced a damaged hydraulic line. Same reason you did, I expect. Pops threaded the new line through its mounting bracket. Sometimes you need to fix something broken to fix yourself. By evening, they had the electrical system working. Maria climbed into the cockpit and turned on the battery. The instrument panel lit up like a Christmas tree. Warning lights flashed red and amber, but the basic systems were responding. Try the radio, Pops called from the ground. Maria flipped the radio switch. Static filled her headset, then cleared. Ground, this is Thunderbolt 691, radio check. Thunderbolt 691, ground. Read you 5x5. The familiar radio exchange sent a chill down her spine. She hadn't heard her own voice on the radio in 5 years. Not bad for a day's work, Pops said, climbing up to look at the instruments. Maria stared at the control stick between her legs. Her hands remembered exactly how it felt to hold it, to feel the aircraft respond to her touch. Tomorrow we'll try starting the engines, she said. Think she's ready? Maria looked at the glowing instruments, then out at the flight line where other A-10s were returning from training missions. Their engines whined as they taxied to parking spots. We'll find out. The weather briefing room buzzed with nervous energy. Maria stood at the back while the meteorologist pointed at a satellite image on the main screen. A massive storm system stretched across 3 states, moving toward Missouri. Winds gusting to 40 knots, the weatherman said. Visibility dropping to 1 mile and heavy rain. Ceiling at 800 feet and falling. Colonel Mitchell sat in the front row with his arms crossed. What's the forecast for this afternoon? Marginal conditions, sir. But flyable for experienced pilots. Maria watched the radar loop. The storm was moving faster than predicted. Red and yellow cells covered the screen like a disease spreading across the map. Sir, she said. Maybe we should postpone the training flights. Mitchell turned around. These pilots need to learn to fly in all conditions. Combat doesn't wait for perfect weather. This isn't combat. It's training. Exactly. And they need training in marginal weather. Mitchell stood up. The schedule stands. Final evaluation flights begin at 1400 hours. The briefing room emptied, but Maria stayed behind. She studied the weather display, watching the storm cells intensify. 20 years of flying had taught her to read weather like a book. This storm was going to be worse than forecast. She found her 4 students in the ready room, suiting up for their flights. Rodriguez was checking his G-suit connections. Chin was reviewing her flight plan. Thompson looked confident as always. Foster was quiet, focused on her pre-flight checklist. How's everyone feeling? Maria asked. Ready to get this over with, Thompson said. I've been waiting 3 months for this check ride. Weather's looking pretty rough, Foster said. You'll be fine. Just remember your instrument procedures. Maria wished she felt as confident as she sounded. Rodriguez zipped up his flight suit. Ma'am, will you be monitoring our flights? From the ground, yes. I mean in the air. Don't instructors usually fly chase on evaluation flights? Maria's stomach tightened. Not always. Colonel Mitchell will be evaluating you from the control tower. She walked back to the hangar to check on her A-10. Pops was running engine tests, the twin turbofans spinning up to full power. The sound echoed through the hangar like controlled thunder. How's she running? Maria asked. Like a champ. All systems green. Pops shut down the engines. You thinking about taking her up? Maybe. Eventually. Weather's getting nasty out there. Maria looked toward the hangar doors. The sky was darker than it should be for early afternoon. I know. At 2 o'clock, she stood in the control tower watching her students taxi to the runway. The tower controllers were busy coordinating with other bases, trying to work flights around the approaching storm. Thunderbolt flight, cleared for takeoff, the controller said. Maria watched the four A-10s roll down the runway and lift off. They climbed quickly, disappearing into the gray overcast. On the radar screen, she could see them as four green blips heading toward the training area. "They'll be fine," Mitchell said, joining her at the window. "These kids are good pilots. The weather's deteriorating faster than forecast. They can handle it." 30 minutes later, the first radio call came in. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the static. "Tower, Thunderbolt 2. We're having trouble with navigation. GPS is intermittent. Thunderbolt 2, Tower. Switch to backup navigation. Already tried. Radio compass is spinning." Maria stepped closer to the radio. "That's electrical interference from the storm. They're losing their navigation systems." Mitchell keyed the microphone. "Thunderbolt flight, this is base. Continue with your training mission." "Sir," Maria said. "They should return to base now. They're fine." Another voice came through the radio, and this time, "Tower, Thunderbolt 4. I'm showing a fuel leak indication." "Thunderbolt 4, say again?" "Fuel leak light is on. I'm showing rapid fuel loss." Maria grabbed the microphone from Mitchell. "Thunderbolt 4, this is Santos. Turn back to base immediately. Declare an emergency." Mitchell took the microphone back. "Thunderbolt 4, verify your fuel readings. It's probably just a false indication." "Tower, the weather down here is getting really bad." Foster's voice was tense. "I can barely see the ground." On the radar screen, the four aircraft were scattered across 50 miles of sky. The storm was between them and the base now, a wall of red and yellow cells. "Sir," Maria said. "We need to get them home now. They're trained pilots. They can handle some weather." "You're right, I made a mistake," Maria said, her voice rising. "But I've lived with that mistake every day for 5 years. These students haven't. They trust the system to keep them safe. Don't let politics override safety." The tower fell silent. Everyone was looking at her. "These are kids," she continued. "They're not combat veterans. They're students on their first solo evaluation flight. And they're about to fly into a storm that's going to test pilots with 20 years of experience." Mitchell stared at her. "You don't get to question my decisions. Then I'll question them as their instructor." The radio crackled again. This time it was Thompson. "Tower, I've lost contact with the other aircraft. I can't see anything down here." Maria looked at the radar screen. The four green blips were spreading apart, each one surrounded by red weather cells. "Sir," the tower controller said quietly. "We're losing radio contact with the flight." Outside, the first drops of rain began hitting the control tower windows. The control tower erupted in controlled chaos. Radio operators tried different frequencies, hoping to raise the lost aircraft. The radar screen showed the four green blips getting smaller and weaker as they disappeared into the storm. "Thunderbolt flight, this is Tower. Do you copy?" The controller's voice was steady, professional. Static filled the radio. No response. "Try emergency frequency," Mitchell ordered. "Already did, sir." "Nothing." Maria pressed her face against the window. Rain streaked the glass, and lightning flickered inside the dark clouds. The storm had swallowed the training area completely. "How much fuel do they have?" she asked. The controller checked his log. "About 40 minutes when they lose contact." "That was 15 minutes ago." "I know." Mitchell was on the phone with search and rescue. "How long until you can get airborne?" He listened, then slammed the phone down. "All SAR aircraft are grounded. Weather's too dangerous." "What about the other squadrons?" Maria asked. "Same story. Nobody's flying in this." The radar operator looked up from his screen. "Sir, I'm losing the radar returns. The storm's too intense." Maria stared at the weather display. The storm covered 200 square miles, and it was getting worse. Lightning flashed constantly inside the clouds. No aircraft could survive in that weather except. "I can get them," she said. "What?" "My A-10. I can fly in that weather." Mitchell shook his head. "You're not qualified. You haven't flown in 5 years. I know those skies better than anyone. And the A-10 can handle weather that would tear apart any other aircraft." "Absolutely not." "Sir," the controller interrupted. "I'm getting a weak signal on emergency frequency." Everyone gathered around the radio. Through the static, they could hear a faint voice, "Mayday, Mayday. This is Thunderbolt 2. We are lost and low on fuel. Can anyone hear us?" Maria grabbed the microphone. "Thunderbolt 2, this is Santos. I hear you. What's your situation?" "Ma'am, we can't see anything. The weather's too thick. Our navigation systems are out. We're flying on compass headings, but we don't know where we are." "How much fuel do you have?" "About 20 minutes. Maybe less." Maria looked at Mitchell. "They're going to run out of fuel and crash. Unless someone guides them home. We can guide them from here." "Through this storm? With no radar contact?" Maria shook her head. "They need someone up there with them. Someone who can see them and lead them through the weather." "You crashed 5 years ago," Mitchell said. "You froze up in the classroom last week. What makes you think you can handle this?" "Because those kids are going to die unless someone helps them. And I'm the only pilot here with an airworthy aircraft." The radio crackled again. This time it was Foster, Tower, Thunderbolt 3. "I can see Thunderbolt 2, but I think we're flying in circles. We're really low on fuel." "Where are the other two?" Maria asked. "Lost contact 20 minutes ago." Maria started walking toward the door. "I'm taking my bird up." "Santos, stop." Mitchell's voice was sharp. "That's an order. I'm not active duty. You can't order me to do anything. I can have you arrested." Maria turned around. "While 4 pilots crash in the storm. Good luck explaining that to their families." She ran down the stairs and across the tarmac toward the hangar. Rain soaked through her flight suit within seconds. Lightning lit up the sky, and thunder rolled across the base like artillery fire. In the hangar, Pops was securing equipment as wind whipped through the open doors. "You can't fly in this weather," he shouted over the noise. "Those kids are lost up there. They're going to run out of fuel. Then let search and rescue handle it. SAR is grounded. I'm the only one who can get to them." Maria climbed into the cockpit. Her hands shook as she strapped in. The seat felt familiar, like an old friend she hadn't seen in years. She started the pre-flight checklist, her fingers moving automatically across the switches. "Maria." Pop stood beside the aircraft. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. That accident 5 years ago. It wasn't your fault." "I know." She looked at him. "But this will be if I don't try." Pops nodded slowly. He reached into his toolbox and pulled out a helmet. Her old helmet, the one she'd worn on 96 combat missions. "Thought you might need this." Maria took the helmet. Inside, she could see the faded squadron patch and her call sign, Viper. "You remember how to fly this thing?" Pops asked. "Like riding a bicycle." "This ain't a bicycle. This is a $30 million aircraft in the worst weather I've seen in 20 years. Maria put on the helmet and plugged in the communications cord. The familiar weight settled on her shoulders like an old coat. "Tower, this is Thunderbolt 691. Request immediate takeoff clearance." "Thunderbolt 691, Tower. Negative. Weather is below minimums." "Tower, I have 4 aircraft lost in the storm with low fuel. I'm taking off with or without clearance." She started the engines. The twin turbofans spun up to full power, the sound echoing through the hangar like controlled thunder. "Ma'am, wait." Pops climbed up to the cockpit. You bring those kids home. And you bring yourself home too. I will. Maria taxied toward the runway. Rain hammered the windscreen, and lightning flashed all around her. She could barely see the runway lights through the storm. But somewhere up there, for young pilots were running out of fuel and running out of time. The runway lights blurred past as Maria pushed the throttles forward. The A-10 accelerated through the sheets of rain, water streaming off the wings. At 100 knots, she pulled back on the stick and felt the aircraft lift off. Instantly, the storm swallowed her. Lightning flashed white-hot around the cockpit. The aircraft bucked and rolled as it climbed through the turbulence. Maria's hands gripped the controls, fighting to keep the plane level. Tower, Thunderbolt 691 is airborne. Thunderbolt 691, tower. Turn right heading 090. Climb to 5,000 feet. Negative, tower. I'm going to find those kids. Maria turned toward the training area. The storm was worse than anything she'd flown through in combat. Rain hammered the windscreen so hard she couldn't see the nose of her own aircraft. Lightning struck nearby, close enough that she could smell ozone in the cockpit. Thunderbolt flight, this is Viper. Do you copy? Static filled her headset. She tried again. Any Thunderbolt aircraft, this is Viper. If you can hear me, come up on emergency frequency. More static. Then, barely audible through the interference, Viper, this is Thunderbolt 2. Rodriguez. Is that really you? It's me, Rodriguez. What's your situation? Ma'am, we're lost. Foster and I are together, but we can't see anything. Our fuel is getting really low. What about Thompson and Chen? Lost contact with them 30 minutes ago. Maria checked her navigation display. The GPS was working, but barely. The storm was interfering with the satellite signals. Rodriguez, I need you to turn on your transponder. I'm going to try to find you on radar. Already tried. Our electrical systems are going crazy. Try again. I'm coming to get you. Maria flew deeper into the storm. The turbulence was so violent that she had to fight to keep control of the aircraft. Ice started forming on the wings, and she turned on the de-icing system. Viper, this is Thunderbolt 3. Foster. I can see some lights below us. Foster, don't descend. Those might be ground lights. You could fly into a hill. We're running out of options here. Fuel is showing 10 minutes. Maria's heart pounded. 10 minutes. She had to find them fast. Foster, Rodriguez, listen to me. I want you to fly heading 270. That should take you away from the hills. Copy, 270. Maria turned to intercept their heading. She pushed the throttles forward, trading fuel for speed. The storm tossed her aircraft around like a toy, but she held course. Viper, Thunderbolt 2. I think I see something. Aircraft at 2 o'clock. That's me. I see you. Through the rain and clouds, Maria could make out the dim shape of an A-10. Then another one nearby. Foster, Rodriguez, I have you both in sight. Turn left heading 220 and follow me home. Copy. But ma'am, we're showing 5 minutes of fuel. Then we better hurry. Maria turned toward the base, flying as fast as she dared in the storm. The two student aircraft formed up behind her, their position lights barely visible through the weather. Viper, this is Thunderbolt 4. Chen. Can anyone hear me? Chen, this is Viper. Where are you? I don't know. I've been flying random headings for 20 minutes. My fuel gauge is showing empty. Chen, turn on your emergency locator beacon. I'm coming to find you. Already did. And ma'am? I'm really scared. Maria's chest tightened. Chen sounded like she was about to panic. Chen, listen to me. You're going to be okay. I'm going to get you home. I can't see anything. The weather's too thick. I know. Just keep flying straight and level. Don't change heading. Maria looked at her fuel gauge. She had enough to get Rodriguez and Foster home, but not enough to search for Chen and Thompson. Rodriguez, Foster, continue heading 220. The base is 30 miles ahead. Where are you going? Rodriguez asked. To find the other two. Ma'am, you don't have enough fuel. I'll worry about that. Maria turned away from the base, back into the storm. She searched the radio frequencies, hoping to hear from Thompson. Thompson, this is Viper. Do you copy? Nothing. Chen, are you still there? I'm here. But my engine's starting to cough. I think I'm out of fuel. Chen, look for a road or a field. You might have to make an emergency landing. I can't see the ground. Try to break through the clouds. Descend slowly. Maria flew toward Chen's last known position. The storm was at its worst here, with lightning striking constantly and winds that threw her aircraft around like a leaf. Viper, this is Thunderbolt 4. My engine just quit. Chen, you're going to have to glide. Look for somewhere to land. I can't see anything. Chen, listen to me. Maria's voice was steady, calm. 5 years ago, I froze up just like you're doing now. I made a mistake that cost my wingman his life. But right now, in this moment, I'm exactly where I need to be. Trust me, trust your training, and trust that old bird you're flying. I'm scared. I know. But you can do this. The A-10 glides like a brick, but it's a tough brick. You just need to find somewhere to put it down. Wait. I think I see lights. Like a highway. That's perfect. Line up with the road and put her down easy. Maria listened to the radio as Chen guided her aircraft toward the highway. The young pilot's voice was shaky but determined. Okay, I'm on final approach. This is really happening. You're doing great, Chen. Just like a normal landing. Touchdown. I'm down. I'm okay. Maria felt a wave of relief. Outstanding, Chen. Stay with the aircraft. Search and rescue will find you. Viper, this is Thunderbolt 1. Thompson. I can hear you on the radio. Thompson, where are you? I don't know. But I found a hole in the clouds. I can see the ground. What do you see? Looks like farmland. And I think I see an airport. Thompson, check your fuel. Showing fumes. Maybe 2 minutes. Get to that airport. Now. Maria turned toward Thompson's position. Her own fuel was getting critically low. She had maybe 10 minutes left. Viper, I can see the runway. It's a small strip, but it looks long enough. Make the approach, Thompson. Don't worry about perfect. Just get on the ground. Copy. Final approach. Maria held her breath as she listened to Thompson land. The radio crackled with static, then his voice came through clearly, I'm down safe. Runway was a little short, but we made it. Good job, Thompson. Maria turned back toward Whiteman. Her fuel gauge was touching empty, and she was still 20 miles from base. The storm was finally starting to weaken, but visibility was still terrible. Tower, this is Thunderbolt 691. Declaring emergency. Low fuel. Thunderbolt 691, tower. Runway is clear. Winds are gusting to 35 knots. Copy. Maria could see the runway lights through the rain. The wind was pushing her aircraft sideways, and she had to crab into the crosswind to stay lined up. 691, you're looking high on approach. I know. I'm going to make it. The runway rushed up to meet her. Maria flared the aircraft and felt the main gear touch down. She pulled the throttles to idle and deployed the speed brakes. Thunderbolt 691, welcome home. Maria taxied to the ramp, her hands shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. Ground crews were waiting to chock the wheels. She shut down the engines and sat in the cockpit for a moment, breathing hard. Pops appeared at the side of the aircraft. "You okay?" "Yeah. I'm okay." "All 4 students?" "All 4. Safe." Maria unstrapped and climbed out of the cockpit. Her legs were weak, but she managed to make it to the ground. Colonel Mitchell was walking toward her across the tarmac. "Santos," he said. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, or the most reckless." "Probably both." Mitchell studied her face. "How do you feel?" "Like I remember why I became a pilot." 3 months later, Maria stood in the same hangar, but everything was different. Her A-10 sat in the main maintenance bay, fully restored and bearing her name on the side. She wore the uniform of an active-duty major, with new orders to run the A-10 training program. "Ma'am," Foster said, approaching with a letter in her hand. "This came for you." Maria opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Lieutenant Morrison's parents. "Major Santos. We heard about what you did in the storm. Thank you for honoring our son's memory by continuing to serve. He would be proud to know that his sacrifice helped make you the pilot and instructor you are today. With gratitude. The Morrison family." Maria folded the letter carefully and looked at her A-10. The phoenix painted on the nose seemed to glow in the hangar lights, wings spread wide beneath the words "second chances." She walked toward the aircraft, ready for another day of training the next generation of pilots. The ghosts were finally at rest. Maria's story reminds us that it's never too late for second chances. We all face moments when we have to choose between letting our past define us or rising above it to help others. Have you ever had to find the courage to try again after a setback? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more inspiring tales.